Hey y'all, welcome back to the Jesus Justice Podcast. My name is Kaylee and we are on episode 2 of our mini-series, Open the Book. Last week we talked about why the Bible even matters. And I told you that I have never seen Star Wars and the world did not end. But I did get a lot of DMs, so I apologize. Still not going to watch it. But today, on this episode of Jesus Justice, I want to answer a question that sounds simple, but the answer reveals a lot. And that is, what even is the Bible? What do you think the Bible actually is? I think how we answer this question reveals what our relationship is with the Word of God and how we approach it and how we view the Bible. Because the wrong idea of what the Bible is will play a major part in why you don't really care to pick it up. So if that's the case, then what is it? If we want to make sure we're opening the book, what is this book? If I had to describe the Bible to someone who has never seen it or heard it before, my actual answer, not my canned church response, would be it's a love letter. Now every man is like, this chick did not just call the Bible a romance novel. And you're right, I didn't call it a romance novel. I did say, however, it is a love letter. A platonic love letter between the God of the universe and his children. And if thinking of the Bible as a love story doesn't sit right with you, that's fine. I'll say it this way. The Bible is a book that expresses how loved you truly are. Now let me explain that. See, the Bible is about a God who loved his creation so much that when creation goofed up and got lost and separated from him, he did everything he could to get back to them. And spoiler, it ended up killing him in the process. The entire story is this God chasing after his people and his people just dodging him and weaving him, running in the other direction, making every wrong turn possible, pursuing other little g gods rather than the ultimate God. Until finally he had enough and he decided that he wasn't going to wait for them anymore to figure it out. He was going to take care of it himself once and for all, giving creation a chance to return back to him for all of eternity. That's the Bible. A churchier way of describing that would be that we, creation, started out in the Garden of Eden with direct access and a deep intimacy with God. Then we fell away. Sin entered into the picture, and because of that, we were removed from the garden, ruining our access and our intimacy with God. And the whole rest of the Bible, from Genesis 3 onward, I'm talking every book, every letter, every prophecy, is about getting back into right standing with God. And the last few chapters of the Bible end with us back in that relationship with God, all because of Jesus and what he did on the cross. He repaired our relationship with God. That's why it's through him that we even have access to the Father. Because he paid the price and did the thing that we couldn't do. Live a sinless life. That's it. That's the Bible. Beginning, middle, and end. It's just one story. And if you think the Bible is boring, odds are high you are looking at it like a textbook, not a love story. Growing up, I would bet money that the only time you read a textbook was for homework. They're not typically what you would choose to pick up during your free time. It's not really casual, recreational reading material. I think that's why a lot of our Bibles are collecting dust. We're viewing them as boring textbooks rather than this beautiful, wild ride of everything God did just to make sure he had a relationship with you. So yeah, I don't agree with folks when they say that the Bible is boring. I just don't think they're approaching it the correct way, or they haven't sat with it long enough to even see how much God was willing to do to ensure that you could spend eternity with him. I think with that, a lot of people are intimidated by the Old Testament. But I look at the Old Testament as like one huge reality TV show. I mean, there's drunkenness, drama, affairs, betrayals, sibling rivalry, scandals, murder, and some other genuinely unhinged moments that I read sometimes and think, surely this is not in the Bible. The Bible's not boring. It's a lot of things, but it's not boring. Now, theologically speaking, when it comes to the Old Testament, there is one thing I'd like to address and clear the air about. God in the Old Testament is the same God in the New Testament. People, when they're reading, though, they'll read the Old Testament and they tend to see God as this harsh, angry, terrifying God. And then they see Jesus in the New Testament as this gentle, peace and love, hippy-dippy kind of guy. And they treat them like they're two completely different people or characters. But here's the thing. They're exactly the same. Jesus said that if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. They're not two different gods with two different personalities and two different motives. Jesus is the full revelation of who God has always been. The God of the Old Testament is the same God who died on the cross for you. When you understand that, you'll read this entire book differently. Look, I told you, God does some crazy and wild things to ensure that you get to spend eternity together. And the craziest thing of them all is that he left his glory and his throne and walked among his creation. Not only that, he died for them, defeating death and freeing his people from the enemy's bondage. And speaking of death, defeat, and crazy, there is this book of the Bible in the New Testament that's probably as crisp as your Old Testament pages, and that's Revelation. Someone just shuddered at the name. I'm just kidding. But I'm not kidding about people skipping the book or being terrified of the book. A lot of people skip it because the style of writing is a bit wacky, and honestly, the content could be a little bit scary, and I get it. I mean, there are dragons in there, for crying out loud. There are battles, there are numbers and dates that people have been arguing about for centuries, and when we read that book incorrectly, just like the rest of the Bible, or with the wrong lens, it leaves us asking questions like, is the rapture real? When is Jesus coming back? What does even all of this mean? And hear me when I say there's nothing wrong with asking those questions or wondering about those things. But if we read the book of Revelation and our last thoughts are on the rapture and Armageddon, we read the book wrong. If you look closely at Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, it tells you exactly what conclusion you should come up with at the end of the book. The revelation of Jesus Christ. That's it. That's what the whole book of Revelation has always been about. Not a prediction machine, not a horror movie. It is a revelation of who Jesus is. And there is nothing scary about that. I mean, unless you're not on his team. Then yeah, who Jesus is might be a bit spooky. But all jokes aside, this book is not about the end of the world. It's about the beginning of a new one. And when you read it for what it actually is, it is one of the most helpful and beautiful things you could have ever read. Because no matter what happens in the chaos that is in the middle of this book, we already know how this story ends. Jesus Christ on the throne. And us spending eternity with our God. That's the whole book. And that's all the Bible is about as well. So what are you supposed to do with all that information? Because it's a lot. What I said was a lot. This is a lot. What are we supposed to do with all of it? Well, my hope is that after this episode, whatever picture you had of the Bible before, whether it was a boring rule book or a confusing ancient text or a book that's just not your speed, that we would set down that idea and that we would adopt that this big old book is just God's love letter to you, written by someone who loved you enough to die for you and was not willing to let the story end without you in it. Because when I approach the Bible that way, I simply can't put it down. Next time, we're going to get really practical. We've talked about how the Bible is relevant and we've talked about exactly what it is. But next time, we're going to chat about how we actually read this thing. I can't wait to get into that together. Like always, make sure you share this episode with somebody, follow the podcast on Instagram, and subscribe so you don't miss another episode of the Jesus Justice Podcast. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.